Well, let's go on to lecture 2. And this is where we start to talk about some of the strategies of what to do if the kids aren't behaving, if there's problems. And one of the things in this, of course, is that to deal with things early, expect and anticipate some of those potential problems. And part of that is sensing where people are having difficulties, especially here in the middle school. They tend to act out. I can't tell you how important it is that kids feel successful in the class and they feel like you're connected to them. Now, if you're in a big school, you may see, I know like at Roosevelt or Lincoln, some of those, you may see 150 kids a day. You may teach 5 or 6 sections, say, of biology or composition or something like that. It's kind of hard to connect with every one of those kids, but you want to make an attempt, especially the kids that are struggling. It makes them very at risk of dropping out if they're not doing well, and the teacher is a really important component of that, so just be aware. And also be consistent with your rules. Okay. Let's talk about what we can do in classroom management to prevent and to work with problems. Well, let's look at responding to these misbehaviors in classroom. And time to time we'll ask you to recall on situations that you had possibly, but let's look at some basics. A bag of tricks, and we often talk about that, about having this bag of tricks. But what is that bag of tricks? And attitudes and expectations. And one of your attitudes is that you expect all kids to be successful. We talk about that bell-shaped curve. Let me just do that quick again. And those of you who didn't remember the first day, that bell-shaped curve was like this. We said if you IQ'd all your students, that the average of the group would be 100, and half would fall below 100 and half would fall above. So you'd half your class be above and half be below. And in that, we call it one standard deviation between 85 and 115 would be 70% of the students, 35% on each side. Okay, and with that, there will be a group of students more than one standard deviation above and a group of students be more than one standard deviation below. And this is the group that really have challenge. And even some of these in this group here are going to have those characteristics. And so what I'm saying is your expectations is that they will be successful also, even though this is the group that's going to have a hard time getting their homework done, getting their seat work done, doing well on tests. They'll just work slower, they'll process slower, they'll think slower. And the challenge for you is that you more than likely function on this side or higher. The teachers traditionally don't know this world down here. And so you don't have any empathy for them. And I'm here to say that this is the group of students that's going to cause you some problems. Okay? And so you'll want to prepare yourself for that, but have expectations for that. Okay. What are you going to expect of your students? Do you believe they're interested in learning and interested in what you're teaching? How do you see your role as a teacher? Are you there to correct them? Are you there to teach them? Are you there to raise them? And here's a bigger question. This is what I call old school. Do you think you got to lay down the law? And that's from back in my time, that the attitude was, I'm in charge, I'm the boss here, I will set the rules, and I'll kill anybody that comes across it. And I had a lot of teachers like that. You got to remember, I started school in 1967. I graduated high school in 1978. And a number of teachers I had along the way, that was the model, because kids were different. Kids were taught to be obedient. Kids were taught to do what adults said, and that doesn't apply anymore. How do you think teachers establish good discipline in the classroom? Is it being their friend? Is it having a bag of tricks? Is it being well prepared? Is it getting to know the parents? How do you work with middle school, high school kids? And that's the other thing. What is your image of the ideal classroom? Is it one that's real quiet, everybody's working at their desk? Is it one that everybody's working together? Is it one where you're the only one talking? you got to get a view in your mind, an image of what that is. How are you gonna, how are you gonna achieve it if you don't have that image? What does active learning look like in a classroom? Is it okay for kids to interact? Is it okay for kids to work together? And of course, a whole new twist to this is the computers. Changes a lot of this. And what is your image of young people today? And one thing I'm seeing different than in my time is that it's all about being entertained. And of course, we spend millions and millions of dollars on this. I look in our house here, the number of things we have to entertain the kids that were unheard of in my time. The Nintendos and the Wiis and the computers, and all in the name of entertainment. And really, of all the sports we're in, is all in the name of entertainment. So you can imagine what I say is how engaged kids are in entertainment, and then they come to school, and then engagement goes down like this. It creates some problems. What is the appropriate relationship between teachers and learners? Okay, let me give you that spiel right now. Just take a minute, sit back, and I want to talk to you about that relationship thing. This is talking about as a classroom teacher, but let me just tell about your personal relationship with kids. This is an area that you never, ever want to be accused of crossing this line. There's people in jail, there's people in prison for crossing this line, but the time to address this is way back at the beginning when it gets started, when that young man or woman starts hanging around the classroom, hanging around when they're in inappropriate times. It's really hard to address this when you're alone and you're used to being alone, and you're looking into each other's eyes and those types of things. One of the rules that I had, and especially when I taught in the treatment center, was I never was alone with a student. Never in the classroom. Boy or girl. And here was my concern was, if this person ever went back and said that I did something or said something or anything like that, even if they recanted it 15 minutes later, it's like unringing a bell. And so I was just really had a phobia about that I carry today, that I'm always a little nervous to be in my office with somebody with the door closed. I like to keep the door at least partially open. And not that you have to be this paranoid, but I'm just saying, in this day and age of inappropriate relationships that we see in the classroom every day, that's an issue. I was just, yeah. So you address this way back when it starts. You can't address this once it starts up, because even then there's going to be hard feelings and he said, she said, I said thing. But just be very, very aware of inappropriate relationships. Are you comfortable sharing power with members of the class? And all this can reveal your philosophy of teaching and learning. And this will also influence how you respond to problems. Are students treated with dignity and respect? Is a classroom a community or a room? And what is not negotiable? Negotiation does not mean no control by the teacher and all power shifted to learners. That is not what it means. But one of the things with dignity and respect, and this will be a lot of this, but in working with students, it's all about dignity. And this is how I think it's changed from when I was a student, is they didn't care about our dignity from time to time. And you can sense from some of my discussion here, I had some issues with teachers growing up, and I really think that's how I got into being a teacher today, is some of those things. I read a research article one time where a college professor was trying to figure out reasons why people became teachers. And he interviewed, I don't know, hundreds of people, hundreds of teachers, and asked them why they became teachers. He was able to narrow it down in one of three things, and you will see yourself in this. The first is that they became a teacher because they liked school a lot. Okay, and so their plan from the beginning, and they would like to repeat that experience. And often that's your elementary teachers. And I have elementary teachers that will say, from the time I was in third grade and had Mrs. Brown, I wanted to be a teacher. The second thing is they feel so strongly about their subject like math, love math, and my release for math is I'm going to teach others. My release for social studies or writing or reading or whatever, I become, and of course, these often are your high school or middle school teachers. And the last category I see myself fall in a little bit is you disliked it. And I dislike some of the teachers, and this is going to sound really funny, but you become a teacher to correct some of those things. And I think that's how I got involved with special ed and how I developed an empathy for the underdog student. Okay, and so you may see yourself in one of those areas, but that has to do with how you treat people and respect your dignity. And again, how do you see your classroom? Is it a place where we negotiate and work together? What's negotiable? Like, there's the school rules. There's no fighting. There's no swearing. You've got to have zero tolerance for some of those things. But is it okay to disagree? Is it okay to talk back? Is it okay to, disagree with other students? Here was one of the things I had that in my classroom that I was not negotiable, and that is you're never going to disrespect somebody else. You're never going to put somebody else down. And working with challenged learners, they had enough put downs in their life that I absolutely was going to hold them up and never let that be. And I would give that spiel about life's too short. And I would stomp the class and say, we're not going to make other people feel bad in here because life's too short. And I implore you to have that kind of respect in your classroom, not only between you, but between each other, that you're not going to let the haves disrespect the have-nots and make them feel bad. You want a place where it's not safe. Let kids feel like they're being disrespected by the other kids. And some are hard. Some are very hard. Some of the kids will be hard to like, and they'll do things that make other kids not like them. And you'll have to protect them. And at times you'll want to unload on them. But what the whole class is seeing is what you do for the least of them is what you do to them. So if you're protecting those least, the kids at the bottom, you'll respect them all. Okay, and serious disruption is fighting, swearing, that stuff. And unilateral power is where you say, now I am in charge and I need to make these decisions. And even though we collaboratively do stuff, when there's these kind of disruptions, and again, those things, fighting, drugs, swearing, inappropriate talk, anything like that, you obviously, you don't have to have rules about that. They know those. Those are school rules. But you step up, you're responsible. And if this thing comes down, if this gets out of control, and you need outside people involved in your classroom, ultimately it comes down to you, and you have to exercise that unilateral power. And you may need to teach how to have self-control and responsibility. One is at the appropriate times to talk. How do you appropriately disagree? How do you appropriately express your frustration? And that's one thing that I have a 9-year-old that gets frustrated easy in school, and we've really had to work through of what do you do when you're frustrated, especially with school things and school work and kids in school. And what he tended to do was, well, number one, cry. And of course, by the time he was in 6, you can't cry in school. And number two, tell the teacher, which doesn't always work. But the third thing he started to do that we're really challenged with is withdraw. Be by himself, not make friends, not work with others, and it's a result of frustration. So you may need to teach about that, what to do. If you're frustrated with what I'm saying, if you're behind, if it's too hard, what do? You come see me, you make an appointment, you send me an email. I say that's electronics now. It makes it a little easier, I think, to kind of work with you. Yeah, you treat me with dignity, and as a student, and I'm telling you, teacher, I'll go to the mat for you. You reach out to me, and if I sense that you care and you accept me and are willing to work with my differences, I'll do whatever. I'll never disrespect you. Okay, features in classroom negotiations. Okay, several types of power. This is what you have to know. These are the fundamental things of managing your classroom, the types of power. The first is expert power. You are the person that's an expert in this area. You're not only an expert in your subject, but you're an expert in teaching, and you're an expert in classroom management. Okay, and with that, you'll have some influence. I'm not done with that one yet, okay. So because you have a degree now from DSU, we can assume that you have some expertise in the field. Whether you're teaching computers or writing, you have some expertise. And with that expertise, that you know how to teach, you know how to manage a classroom, you know how to give tests, you know how to grade, you know how to manage the class. And with that, the students will give you some credential. They will yield to you. You earn this because they see. Now, if they sense you don't know what you're doing, you are disorganized, you're not well planned, this here gets kind of fuzzy. But it's like, you can remember when you first were in school, and those teachers, they were experts in this compared to you. Not compared to the world, not compared to each other, compared to you in this classroom, they're an expert in this area. Now, kids challenge us more than they used to? Absolutely. The second one is called referent power. The referent power is a power that results from a warm, positive relationships. And this is what I said early on, because you care. That I will treat you with respect, teacher, if you teach me with respect. If you treat me and teach me with respect. It has to do with relationships. That I'm willing to let other students have a say. I'm willing to let students make decisions with me. I'm willing to let students talk and share. When I disagree, I do it in a respectful way. I'm not yelling and screaming. I'm not assaulting their character. I may challenge their behavior, but never their character, never who they are as a person. If you want this referent power, you must be someone that students respect, trust, and cares about them. And it takes some time to establish this. And what does that look like to care about someone? Well, here's some of the things that I did. And I taught in a big middle school, and I had lots of challenged learners. And one of the things I did is if I ever saw them away from my classroom, I addressed them. I said hello. I asked about them. When I had them in my classroom, I always took a few minutes at the end or sometime to see how they were doing, to notice that they were doing better, to talk about how they looked and what was going on in their life. And if I ever saw them away from the school, which in Sioux Falls, of course, didn't happen very often, but I always connected with them, and I would always introduce my wife to them if she was with me. They didn't know what to do with that. They had no idea. That made them nervous and embarrassed and stuff, but it was a connection that they liked. Later, they would always talk about my wife after that if they've ever met her. And so I connected that way, and I always congratulated them when they were doing well. And again, you earn this. That is not granted to you. The principal doesn't hire you and say, you now have this referent power. You have to earn that by connecting with kids. And if you're in a big school with a lot of kids, that takes a while to connect with them. But you'll see some of these teachers that come to our school that are Teacher of the Year. You can see that they all function in that they are connecting with kids, that they love those kids, and the kids know it. Okay, the third one, we had expert power, or referent power, and now legitimate power. And this is from the particular position that the person holds. This is what the school board grants you, the principal grants you. We sign you a contract. We say you have the power in this classroom to teach, manage, grade, test, etc. Okay? It's given by the administration of the board, and it becomes problems result because not all accept it. And that's what I'm saying. The kids today, not all accept the fact because you're an adult in this room that you are in charge and you have authority. And so that you'll have some banter with that. Yeah. And yes, if you're saying this is how I'm going to operate, you're going to have some challenges. You may win battles, but you won't win the war. When you build your authority on just expert and referent power, legitimate power increases. That it isn't long, they'll say, because he's the teacher. But what this teacher, I know he knows what he's doing, and I know he cares about my learning, and therefore he's in charge of this class, or she's in charge of this class. Think back to the teachers you had that were like this, that you know cared about you and cared about teaching, how much better teacher they were. And then here's the fourth one, the fourth and final of the four, that will also be use to you, and that is reward power. The ability to provide something another person sees as desirable. What are those things? Yes, grades. You'll have a group of your class that this will be, and I find at the university level, that is a huge motivator. There'll be others that because I get to do something or I don't have to do something will be a reason to motivate me. And some, my 9-year-old is real big on that. That's how he feels connected and appreciated, is if you're constantly encouraging him, you're doing great, nice job, nice work on that. And what we always say is a nice effort, because that's all, school's a little hard for him, and so we don't try and focus on what's accomplished, on the effort. And frankly, some days he doesn't give his best effort, and then he has some explaining to do. And we've literally had him redo some of the work at school here at home when he gets home if he didn't give his best effort. Not all receive these rewards. And again, when we go back to this group of students that are lower functioning kids, this will not be a motivation as grades. I had lots of kids that didn't care about grades. They were so used to failing that there had to be something else. And the other thing with grades is, if you're not a college bound, if you don't see this as fitting into your life, A's over C's don't mean anything. And I'm not willing to spend the time and effort to get better grades. So I better have some other connection with you as teacher other than just grades. And so, again, for the most part, you folks as teachers function because of grades. But you're going to have 25% in your class that will not be what motivates them. So if you don't get this in, you'll get a 0 on it, will not be a reason for me to get this assignment in. Will not be. Okay? And you'll want to say to them, well, then it's hurting you or hurting your grade. Oh, so sad. That won't be a thing. And so you're going to have to find other things that motivate me, that will give you power other than those grades that you traditionally work from. Just know this will be a factor. And this is granted, again, by the authority of the principal, school board, and even DSU, and that little thing that you'll have at the end is called a credential that says that you're a certified teacher. Also says that you have that ability. Yes, and it can vanish quickly, gone, if they don't value your things that you reward them with. Won't mean a thing. And so sometimes you'll have to really hunt to see what it is that motivates those kids. And of course, it works best if I think you care about me and I think you know what you're doing. And I think you will. You'll know what you're doing. I mean, don't worry about that. It'll take you a little while to get organized and feel comfortable, but you'll know what you're doing. And so you'll mostly work on those relationships. And the coercive power, and this is the one that I was used to, and I guess because I was big and loud that I saw this most in teachers, that people wield because of the ability to administer punishment. If this is relied on, creates classroom environments that are not warm, caring, or positive. And again, you're going to have some problems if this is your style. And of course, you have the ability to punish. And I can remember what happens again here. You may lose the battle or win the battle, but you don't win the war. And we had one that was especially especially punitive in our school when I was in high school, that just killed kids, just absolutely belittled them in front. And of course, so he had some problems away from school. And this is a horrible story, but one night, when a kid in my class brought a live chicken from home, and this guy was a coach, and he was going to a game, and his pickup was sitting in the parking lot, and he had an old pickup, and it wasn't locked. Now I know what you're thinking. He put this chicken in the pickup, but no. First he cut the head off it, and so this chicken went nuts inside that vehicle, bleeding, and really made a mess. Unbelievable. But this guy was one that was really hard to like, I thought, and I thought he was specifically hard on me, but a whole group of kids. But the only thing he ever did was what I call kill kids. Kick them out of class, yell at them, belittle them. It just was always like that. And so, even if you behaved in your class, you loathe him. And so it was an issue. So, and again, this isn't earned. This is granted. The board says you can kill kids if you want. When I taught in middle school, this was really interesting. We had about 75 teachers where I was teaching in the building. In 1 year, we had 1,800 office referrals. 800 office referrals in one semester, and 70% came from about 5 different teachers. 70% came from 5 teachers out of 75. So they were the punitive ones. That was their way of managing the classroom. They were coercive, saying, get out, get out, get out, get out, get out. The principal was telling me, I actually did a study on this when I was doing my dissertation. The principal said that those 5 took up 70% of the time in the office. And he felt it was their inability to adapt to the students and stuff. And unfortunately, these 5 were all older, some of the older teachers in the building. And I said it was because kids had changed. And yes, in those classrooms, you would see they had constant conflict. If you were ever in there was never harmony.